Hello and welcome to AgriCulture Live. My name's Rebecca Shields. I'm one of the directors at Agricultural Recruitment Specialists. Now, don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss this. It's a great episode. It's all about red tractor and food assurance in the UK. If you've got any comments or questions, please post them in the chat and we'll come to them when we can. So straight over to the guys, Steve and Sam, would you like to introduce yourself, where you work and so on?
Yes, so I'm Stephen Shields. I'm the Technical and Sustainability Director at Huntapac Produce. So we're a fresh produce supplying company, a family-owned business, fourth generation, supplying the main retailers. And as part of my role as the Technical Director, I also sit on a number of boards, one of them being the Red Tractor Board, along with Sam. And I also sit on the NFU board as the Vice Chair for the Horticultural Board.
Thanks, Stephen. Hiya, I'm Sam Trevey. I'm the Fresh Produce Technical Manager at Red Tractor. So I have responsibility for all kind of fruit and veg in the sector. And I've been with Red Tractor about 1.5 years, and previously I've worked at a food manufacturer, doing farm and supplier audits to various kind of retailer standards.
Okay, so how did you guys get into the food industry and why?
Well, I started in the food industry, I was calculating this before, about 36 years ago now. So I started in the meat sector, working in the protein for a number of years, and then I moved across to fresh produce about 18 years ago. I moved over to Huntapac, and I've been here ever since, really. So I think food's always been what I've done, so I've always worked in it, really.
And you, Sam?
So not quite as long as Stephen, but I've kind of first started working in the food industry probably about 20 years ago, just over 20 years ago. So I live in South Lincolnshire, so it's obviously a big kind of horticultural area. It just started off as a weekend job in a local kind of food manufacturer, I sort of worked my way up through that company, doing a few kind of various operational roles, and then eventually getting into technical and fresh produce, which I really enjoyed. I've been doing that for the past kind of 10-15 years of my career.
Brilliant. And is the food industry a good industry to be in, and why?
Do you want to go? I think for me, I find it. I think every day is different in the food industry. So you have different challenges every day. Whether that's ethical challenges, audit challenges, environmental or customer challenges. So every day is different, and that's one thing that I've liked about the food industry, and that's why I've stayed in it for so long. Really, I think it's that variability that every day is totally different.
Yeah, absolutely, I completely agree, Steve. And I think also it's I think what's perhaps not maybe so well appreciated is that within the food and farming industry there are so many different roles available. There's I personally work in technical, so ensuring that food's kind of safe, really, at the heart of it. But also that there are you could be into marketing, commercial, digital and data roles are becoming more important in the industry. And it's a safe industry to work in because everybody's going to need food. So you're never going to lose that need there.
Well, you definitely weren't affected by COVID, were you? Everyone was still eating.
Exactly.
So I know, Steve, obviously you sit on the board at Red Tractor, and Sam, you actually work for them. How did you get into that?
So in my previous role, I was more, I was carrying out supplier audits, so to various different standards across the UK and across the world, to some extent as well. So I did that role for about 10 years, I think. So I've got a good background in in food safety standards, and then I moved into Red Tractor about 1.5 years ago. So stepping back from doing the audits myself and more working on developing those standards.
Okay, so there might be people watching that don't even know what Red Tractor is. Could you tell them, for those that don't know?
Yeah, sure. So, so in simple terms, Red Tractor are, the company, the body that own and develop the standards for, each of the farm sectors we operate in. So, that's combinable crops and sugar beet, fresh produce, beef, lamb, dairy, pigs, and poultry. And we also operate some kind of post-farm gate standards as well, more in the livestock sectors. So Red Tractor farmer members are audited against those standards by an independent third-party certification body. And then following a successful audit, growers or farmers will receive a certificate to market their produce Red Tractor assured. So this means that the Red Tractor logo can then be placed on the end product, on the supermarket shelf. And then that reassures shoppers that the food and drink that they're buying has been produced to our high standards, and which ensure that that food or drink is safe, it's traceable, and it's done with care. So the team at Red Tractor, so we're a fairly small team of about 35 people, and so where I fit in the technical department, we have a technical manager for each of those farm sectors, and we help to develop those standards by working with our sector board, which is made up by various stakeholders from across the supply chain, including Stephen, and that includes growers, processors, experts from across the industry and retailers, and that ensures that growers' interests are represented when we develop the standards, and every part of the supply chain has a level of input where necessary.
And how many standards are there, Sam? What are the main standards?
I've not counted them, but so we have several different sections within the standards, and it covers some core kind of principles, such as, like I said, about traceability within fresh produce. It's really that food safety element is so important because a lot of what we produce in fresh produce can be eaten raw, so we have to take that into account. So we have standards in place around things like irrigation water use, compost and manure applications, and worker hygiene and things like that, to ensure that there's that we really control and reduce the the risk of contamination of the product throughout production.
Okay, and how did this scheme come about?
So I think the Red Tractor scheme was first developed about over two decades ago. It was originally known as British Farm Standards, and was really set up by the UK kind of food and farming industry to reassure shoppers of the safety of British produce. That was kind of on the back of a series of food safety scares in the 1990s. That was involving E. coli, salmonella, and BSE was really the big one. And these issues like this are thankfully they're nowadays they're quite rare, and trust in British food has come a long way since then. I mean, I'm kind of just about old enough to remember the BSE crisis, and back then people would avoid British beef, and that kind of seems unthinkable today. I think I'm sure that Red Tractor's had a part to play in rebuilding that trust.
So who were the main users of Red Tractor then?
So we have altogether about 50,000 British farms who are farmer members of Red Tractor. Yeah. We have about 600 food businesses across the UK which make a Red Tractor claim on their products. So that can be either using the logo on the pack, or kind of using it as part of their buying specifications. And altogether, it covers around £16 billion worth of food and drink per year is Red Tractor assured. So it's a requirement of most of the big UK retailers.
And who funds it, or is there a charge? How does it work?
So it's funded in part by farmer members, and also in part by those kind of licensed food businesses that are using the logo. So it's kind of 50-50. And so we operate on on a not-for-profit basis. So all of our income is then reinvested back into our operations and marketing. So marketing is a big part of what we do as well. You might have seen the television adverts. So there's that kind of consumer awareness marketing aspect as well.
Is this where the Buy British thing came from?
I think there's I think that there's various initiatives in place. I think NFU have similar initiatives, and AHDB do a similar thing on the meat and livestock sectors.
Okie doke. So how, you're a farmer, you've got produce. How do you become Red Tractor assured? What do you need to do?
So it's a fairly simple process, really. So the scheme's kind of open to any UK farmer. Anybody can apply to become a Red Tractor member. So once they've applied and had a successful audit and they've resolved any issues that have been found, they'll then receive a certificate from their certification body and will then become Red Tractor assured. So they'll be able to make this claim on their products. And then after this initial assessment, they'll then have annual re-audits to take place to kind of maintain that certification. And any issues that are found within that cycle, that there's a process for resolving them.
And do you think enough of the general public and food consumers know about Red Tractor?
So our research shows I think about 74% of shoppers recognise the logo, and it's that's significantly higher than any other kind of comparable UK farm assurance scheme. Like I said, a big part of what we do is marketing to try and get those key messages across to shoppers to really reinforce what the scheme stands for.
Okay, and so what are the benefits of being Red Tractor assured?
I think the benefits from a food business organisation is it does offer an element of due diligence for a business, and it provides customers with a bit of confidence in what they're purchasing. Is what it provides them. And I suppose if you want to export the product as well, it gives the exporters that confidence as well. So it does provide that.
And are there any drawbacks?
I think one thing that's been talked about a lot recently has been about audit burden and about having too many audits. And as a sector, from a horticultural sector, there are, we as a business our size, we might get up to 20 audits a year across retail, accreditation bodies and Red Tractor. And I think, being on the Red Tractor board, one thing we are looking into doing is to look at how we align the assurance scheme of Red Tractor and how we try to make that a more efficient process as well. So that is going on in the background as well. Okay,
and when do you think that'll be done?
Well, I think it's early stages so far, isn't it, Sam? But I think it's I think at present it's gathering what the sort of feels are about Red Tractor and what changes could be made. Well, there's a whole process to go of governance and all the rest before we get to any further stages on that.
So Stephen, talk to us. Why are food standards so important in the UK?
I think we've got like world-class standards in the UK really for food production. And I think that does offer a level of confidence, as I said before, for buyers. I think it offers a lot of due diligence as well. If there are issues, you've got that due diligence to fall back on. But I think overall, it's the confidence piece about having that confidence for consumers to buy into it, whether that's meat, whether that's poultry, whether it's fresh produce. It does give that level of confidence, really.
And does the Red Tractor logo mean free range?
So all of our core Red Tractor standards should be accessible to all UK farms.
Yeah.
So our standards in the poultry sectors are, they're world leading in terms of, things like hygiene and animal welfare. So although we don't require all of our poultry members to be operating at free range standards, we do offer a free range, like an add-on assessment, to those farms who are free range to allow them to kind of demonstrate those credentials to customers, and then they're able to use, a separate red tractor free range logo. We also offer in the poultry sector, we also offer an enhanced welfare add-on, which is, you know, similarly to the free range one. It allows them to use a separate logo, and that's for farms that are, you know, providing even more space for birds, enriched living conditions, and using like slower growing breeds, which are in line with requirements of the better chicken commitment.
Okay, and so what can you tell us about the UK food industry and where it's at currently?
I think from a UK, well, look at the veg sector that I work in. There's some DEFRA stats that come out recently that show the veg sector is actually going backwards from a home procurement or home grown sort of status. It's going backwards since about 2018. The numbers are going backwards. So from a level of food security, we're probably about 52% or that sort of level, and the rest have to come from imports. I think what the industry has seen over the years has been consolidation within the sector as well, you know, which is a shame for some of the smaller growers. And I think really as a sector, what we need to get better at doing is really getting that breadth of growers out there, really, rather than trying to consolidate. I think it needs to have more growers in it, and we need to bring new entrants into the sector as well.
How do you think we could bring more people into the growing sector?
I think it's a challenge, you know. If you went on Dragon's Den with the idea of putting some crops in the ground and growing them yourself, not knowing the outcome you're going to get, not knowing the weather they're going to be under and all the rest, they probably wouldn't invest into it. It's a very difficult business to get into, really, is horticulture. I think for new entrants coming into it, I think we talked earlier, I think there are a range of jobs people can get into. And I think as we progress and as we become more autonomous within this, you know, using autonomous vehicles and the skills become a higher skill set, I think we'll see more people wanting to come into the sector, I think.
What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Stephen. It's, you know, I think maybe one of the issues, you know, I think the average age of a UK farmer is close to 60. So, you know, we have an aging cohort, but not enough kind of new young people coming into the industry. And I don't know. I wonder if there's perhaps a lack of appreciation as to how varied those roles can be. You know, you can work in agriculture without being, you know, you don't necessarily have to be a boots on the ground, you know, a tractor driver or that kind of, or anything more physical than that. There's roles within agriculture in the background in things like digital and data and kind of exciting new technologies like that, which might be more attractive to younger people perhaps. But yeah, I think also I think labour is a big issue, and you know, labour availability is, you know, I think perhaps going to become more of an issue as we go forward. You know, Stephen mentioned automation, which, you know, could be part of the solution, but I think we're not there yet, and we're always going to need staff.
Absolutely, and we don't want our figures for food security to go down. We want them to be going up, don't we, really?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, and so in terms of those considering a career in food, are there generally many opportunities available?
Yeah, I think there are. I think you know, if you looked at our business, we have a farming operation, a packing operation, and a distribution side. So across, you know, and that's just one business, and you know, so within that, there's a range of jobs and job functions that need to be fulfilled. You know, so I think there is that. I think within the horticultural sector, there's a lot of business reinvest in people as well, and really try to bring people on and develop them within the sector. So I do think, you know, normally if you enter the horticultural sector into fresh produce, you do seem to stay in it for a period of time, and it's the same faces within the sector moving around. So I think it is one of those that when you do end up in it, you do stay in it for a very long time.
Absolutely. So why should people consider food as a career path? You know, there's going to be students watching, deciding, you know, which way they're going to go. What can you say to them?
I think there's a wealth of different. Sorry, Sam. I think there's a wealth of different opportunities for people to join into, whether that's NPD, whether it's spraying, whether it's agronomy, or account management, or technical or quality. There's a whole host of jobs available for people. I think working in fresh produce, there's all sorts of overseas travel available as well. If you start getting involved with companies that import and export, so really it does open up to every sort of job you could think of in fresh produce.
Absolutely, yeah. I agree with everything Stephen said. I mean, from a personal point of view, like I said, I started my first role in the food industry when I was 16. Still at school, working at a weekend job, putting pots of coleslaw in boxes was my first role. So not especially glamorous, but within that business, I was I kind of worked my way through into doing various different roles along the way, and I had all the relevant kind of on the job training and qualifications, etc. And when I got into a technical role, like Stephen said, I had the opportunity to travel the world and see places I wouldn't have otherwise been able to see. And I developed the relevant skills to be here where I am today, working at Red Tractor.
And from what I can see from a recruitment point of view, is that there's lots of opportunities for career progression once you get your foot in the door, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you both, over to you, Sam, firstly. What do you think are going to be the next big issues in the industry going forward? Because I ask everyone this.
I think I wasn't sure whether to say this or not, because I'm sure everybody says the same thing. But I think climate change is obviously going to have such a huge, and I think is to some extent already having such a huge impact on the sector. I think that the past, the winter just gone, I think was one of the wettest we've seen for a very long time, and that had a big impact on crops. And I think we're probably still seeing some of the knock-on effects of that. So I think as we see more and more extreme kind of weather events, whether it's flooding, droughts, extreme temperatures, that's going to have I think not only an issue on actual crop production, but from my point of view, that from a food safety point of view, there's potential impacts there. So you might have, where you have flooding, you have the opportunity to spread pathogens and sewage water, things like that across fields. So that presents a risk. And also as ambient environmental temperatures, soil temperatures increase, that might create a more favourable environment for certain bacterial pathogens as well. So there's all these other things that might have an impact, as well as the climate potentially becoming more favourable to certain pests and diseases of crops as well. So that I think there's lots of different ways it could affect food production. I think that it's not entirely all bad news, because I know that there's a flourishing wine industry in the UK, which is has been made possible by climate change to some extent. So I guess the role of the industry is to to adapt and change to those those challenges.
And what do you think, Stephen, are going to be the big issues?
I think Sam's right on the climate change front. I think weather over the last couple of years has been, it's been extremes, really, from extreme drought a few years ago to extreme wet, as we saw last year. So obviously that has impacts on crops and the growing of crops and the yields you get from those crops as well. So I think weather has been a key change over the last 3 to 4 years in our business particularly. And then I think linked to that, there's been a lot of talk about risk and resilience within the supply chain, and a lot of people are putting more emphasis into looking at how we can mitigate risks of extremes of weather, whether that's inputs or whatever it might be, or look at different growing areas or different varieties. I think linked to that has also been costs. Costs within the sector have been going up since COVID, really, and then because we have the Ukraine war, which forced fertilizer prices up. So I think costs are one thing that are a significant issue for the sector. I think if you looked at the profitability of most large produce businesses, there's probably not a lot of profit being made from them, really. So I think there's a piece of for people to understand like the cost of producing food, which sometimes I don't think consumers really understand the cost of what it is to produce, fresh produce. If you look at all the different inputs and all the different costs associated to it, there's a whole host of costs, and yet you see carrots on at 50p a kilo, whatever it might be, and it doesn't really cover that sort of cost really. So I think costs are a key part, and I think we need to start looking at how we can make consumers understand what goes into producing our products in our sector.
Absolutely. What, in terms of what could we do to help farmers get the margins up, do you think?
I think a lot of it is consumer understanding, really. I mean, if you looked at what the inputs are, so you've got seeds, you've got land rent, you've got tractors, you've got to plough, you've got to bed form, you've got all your farming costs, then you've got all your processing kit and your processing costs, of which these lines are all bespoke to deal with fresh produce coming through them. Then you've got labour costs, which is ever increasing, and under this new Labour government, I think that's going to go up again, which isn't a bad thing, but it's going to go up again. And then from a transport point, obviously diesel's going up all the time. So all these costs all build into the end product cost, really. And I think it's how we get consumers to understand that, really, and understand the value of fresh food.
Because I don't think consumers understand that food here is cheap, isn't it?
Indeed, yeah. I think if you looked on the continent compared to the UK prices, fresh produce is relatively cheap, really.
Yeah, but it's how you go about it, isn't it?
Mm.
Absolutely. Well, I really, really enjoyed that discussion, both Sam and Stephen. You've given us some great insights into the food industry, the importance of food assurance, and all about Red Tractor. So it was so good to have both of your inputs today. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. Keep following us. We have some great new discussions coming up, including speaking with Dan Smith, who's a Nuffield scholar, and we'll be talking about how to get the next generation involved in agriculture and farming. But if you've got an interesting topic in agriculture that you would like to talk about, please get in contact with me via Agricultural Recruitment Specialist, which is www.agrirs.com. And if you'd like to hear more on new issues and topics within the agricultural and farming industry, you can follow us on various channels, including Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Just look up AgriCulture Live. So that's all from me. Thank you for joining us. And Sam and Stephen, would you like to say goodbye?
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.